Okay, so if we go ahead and subtract 6 on both sides, we have 3x. Those two cancel each other out. Equals 12 minus 6, which is 6. Divide both sides by 3. Anything divided by itself is just 1. So we know that x is equal to 6 divided by 3, which is 2. Okay. So we know for that very same equation, we have 2, 6. Or when y is equal to 6, x is equal to 2. All right, so the last one for C, that's -1 and some unknown y. Okay, so just like the first one, they gave us our x, but we have to solve for y. Okay, so we know x equals -1, and this is just telling us to solve for y. Okay, same equation, 3x plus y equals 12. We know that x is equal to -1. That's 3 times -1 plus y equals 12. So 3 times -1 is just -3. So -3 plus y equals 12. Go ahead and add 3 to both sides. Those two cancel each other out. So you're left with y equals 12 plus 3, or just y equals 15. Okay. So we end up with the ordered pair of -1, 15. Okay, so we have -1, 15, or when x is equal to -1, y is equal to 15. Straighten that up a little. There we go. All right, any questions on that one? All right. So let's say if we wanted to complete the table, for the equation y equals 3x. Okay, and our table looks like this. Okay, this is our x, and this is our y. Okay, so let's say if we get 3 sections here. We have -1 here. We have 0 here. We have -9 there. Okay. So really, this is the exact same thing we did before, because this one is the exact same thing as -1, some unknown y. This is the same thing as we don't know x, but we know that y is 0. Okay, and this one is the exact same as we don't know x, but we know that y is -9. Just a different way to draw the exact same thing. All right, so we know that. And we'll call this A, we'll call this one B, and we'll call that C. just to kind of clear it up. Okay, so we know for A, they gave us x is -1. So we just have to solve for y. Okay, so we know that x is equal to -1. And solve for y. Okay, so we know that y equals 3x. Since we know x is -1, that just means y equals 3 times -1. So y is equal to -3. Okay, so we know that when x equals -1, y is equal to -3. All right, so we can do the same thing for b. Separate that a little bit. So for b, we have some unknown x and 0. Okay, so we know that y is equal to 0. So we just have to solve for x. Okay, so again, we know that y is equal to 3x. Since y is equal to 0, that becomes 0 equals 3x. Okay. So now we just have to solve for x, so we divide both sides by 3. Okay, anything divided by itself is 1. You just want to remember that 0 divided by any number is going to equal 0. So as long as the 0 is up top, it's just going to equal 0, no matter how big that denominator is. Now, if you have 0 on the bottom, that's when it's undefined. Okay, so we know that x is just going to equal 0. Or x equals 0 divided by 3, which is just 0. Okay. So we know that when y is equal to 0, x is equal to 0. Okay. So we solved C the same way we solved A. Move that up a little bit. Okay, so we know for C, they gave us that y is equal to -9. So we know that y is equal to -9, and we just solve for x. Okay, so again, we start off with our y equals 3 times x that they gave us. And we know y is equal to -9. So that means -9 equals 3x. Okay. So we solve for x by dividing both sides by 3. Anything divided by itself is just 1. That means that x is equal to -9 divided by 3, which is -3. So in other words, when y is equal to 9, x is equal to -3. Well, y is equal to -9, x is equal to -3. Y is equal to -9, x is equal to -3. All right, so any questions on that one? All right. Forgot to actually put the table up there. So our table would just look like, that's our x and that's our y. That would be -1, -3. That would be 0, 0. And that would be -9, -3. Okay, so that would just be our table. Bring that down a little. So any questions on that one? All right. Looks like everyone's done writing. Okay, so what if we wanted to complete the table? For the equation, say y equals 1/2 x minus 5. And our table looked something like this. Okay, so again, we have 3 separate sections. Let's say we have -2 here, we have 0 here, and we have a 0 there. And just like before, we'll call this one A, this one B, and this one C. Okay, so for A, we already know that's the same as -2 and some unknown y. Okay, which means that we know that x is equal to -2, and we have to solve for y. Okay, so if we have our y equals 1/2 x minus 5, and we know that y is equal to -2, we have y equals 1/2 times -2 minus 5. Okay, so the 2's cancel out, which leaves you with 1 times -1. That's y equals -1 minus 5, which means that y is equal to -6. Okay, so we know that when x is equal to -2, y is equal to -6. So we end up with -2, -6. When x equals -2, y equals -6. Okay. We do the same thing for b. We know that x is equal to 0. So we know that that's the same as 0 and some unknown y. Okay. So we know that x is equal to 0, and we're going to solve for y. Okay. So we have the same y equals 1/2 x minus 5, but this time our x is going to equal 0. So y equals 1/2 times 0 minus 5. Okay, and 0 times anything is just 0, so we have 0 minus 5, so we know that y is going to equal -5. So in other words, when x is equal to 0, y is equal to -5. Y equals -5. Same thing for C, but this time they gave us the y, we have to solve for x. Okay, so we know that C, kind of separate that a little bit. That's the same as some unknown X, and they gave us a Y. Okay, so we know that Y equals 0, and this is telling us to solve for X. Okay, so again,